Good evening and Jai Hind. A warm welcome to everyone present here. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to today's session on corporatization of Ordnance Factory Board by Indic Researchers Forum. Indic Researchers Forum is a think tank that aims at delivering quality research on geopolitics, national security, international relations, and its various aspects through a civilizational perspective. I'm Mridula Hariharan, a research associate of the organization, and I'm extremely delighted to be moderating today's session. Today, we have the honor of having Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar share his expertise on the same. Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, VSM, retired from the Indian Army as Major General Army Ordnance Corps Central Command after 37 years of meritorious service to the nation. General Kochar, a prolific writer and defense analyst, has authored several books and has been invited as an expert commentator by various media outlets. He is also the recipient of the Vishisht Seva Medal awarded by the President of India and holds several other notable commendations. Sir is also a member of Advisory Council of Indic Researchers Forum. Sir, it's a pleasure having you today. Thank you for your valuable time.
Thank you very much, Mridula. A
Getting
pleasure
into
for me too.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Getting into the topic, on September 28th, the center issued orders which announced the dissolution of state-owned arms manufacturer Ordnance Factory Board (OFB) from October 1st. With this, an organization that traces its roots back nearly 250 years will cease to exist in its current form. It would be dissolved into seven new defense PSUs, namely Munition India Limited, Armored Vehicles Nigam Limited, Advanced Weapons and Equipment India Limited, Troop Comforts Limited, Yantra India Limited, India Optel Limited, and Gliders India Limited. These companies will be 100% state owned. The centre's decision to dissolve OFB was first announced by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman as part of her Atmanirbhar Bharat set of announcements in May 2020. The idea was to improve autonomy, accountability, and efficiency in ordnance supplies by dismantling the public sector behemoth into smaller, better managed companies. Thank you, sir, and we welcome you once again. We are truly honored to have you here.
Thanks a lot, Mridula.
Yeah.
And
So on this
thanks a lot,
note,
Yashas also.
On this note, my first question to you is on the impact of the existing structures of the Ordnance Factory Board. Was the corporatization of the Ordnance Board Factory a necessity?
Yes, Mridula, it's very important to understand why the government had to resort to corporatization. Uh, it's a very old saying that if ain't broken, don't mend it. But things were not happening the way the armed forces or the security of the country wanted it to happen. There were issues regarding quality. In the last 6 years, there have been 403 ammunition accidents, 27 lives of soldiers have been lost without fighting a war. There were numerous complaints from the armed forces with regard to delays, with regard to the high pricing of the items. For example, a uniform which was manufactured by the ordnance factory was three times more costlier than what was available in the local market. So, seeing these things, there were a number of committees which went to it as early as late 90s. You had the TK Nair committee in 2000. You had the Kelkar committee in 2006. You had the Raman Puri committee in 2016. So they all recommended corporatization, but the government of the day at that point of time was in a state of inertia. They did not uh, take a decision on that. So finally, it was only under the prime ministership of Narendra Modi ji that the corporatization has actually happened. And not only corporatization, a number of defense reforms have been initiated. You would be aware the FDI through the automatic route has been increased from 49 to 74%. The CDS appointment, a long felt demand of the armed forces, has been put into place. Then you had the Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020 coming into play, where the procurement systems have been streamlined. Then you had the negative list for imports, and I'll be actually going into it as I go along. And you also had the defense corridors coming up with a dedicated area allotted only for defense production. So, considering all these things in mind, on 16th of June 2021, the government took the decision of converting the assets of the Ordnance Factory Board, which consists of 41 factories, 13 development centers, 9 institutes of learning, and to amalgamate them into 7 identities. These 7 identities are basically the ammunition and explosive group, the vehicles group, the weapons and equipment group, troops comfort group, ancillary group, the optoelectronics group, and the parachute group. So the entire restructuring has been done now, and earlier it used to actually happen that there was an ordnance factory board which used to function from Calcutta. They had a board of directors. They used to be taking stock of all the 41 ordnance factories, taking a decision, recommending it to the government in the Ministry of Defense production. But then the government used to take the call. The OFB administration was not competent even to take a decision on their own. So all this is going to change now. Now what is going to happen is that you are going to have a totally a new paradigm of functioning, and as we go along, I'll be explaining to you how this new restructuring will come about. Thanks.
That was quite an insightful answer, sir. Yeah, like how you mentioned that there's going to be a completely new paradigm. What are the new features of the proposed structure, sir?
So now if you look at the ordnance factories, it is a blend of old as well as the state-of-art factories. The first ordnance factory came about a long time back. 1801 was the first ordnance factory which came about in Kausipur near Calcutta, and it was manufacturing assault rifle. And the latest ordnance factories have come up in Nalanda and Korwa in UP, and these are state-of-the-art one. These are the modern ones. So it's a blend, I can say. Once we discuss about the ordnance factories, it is a blend of the old and the new. Now, what used to actually happen is armed forces was a captive customer. Almost 85% of the orders of the ordnance factories were placed by the armed forces on the ordnance factory. This is going to change now where the new structure, it is going to be a global tendering now. You will not have army as a captive customer any longer. You will have to compete in the local market. These seven entities, as I mentioned to you, will be like PSUs. There will be seven corporate firms functioning independently, and they will have their own board of directors, their own organizational structure. They will be given a status of Maharatna PSU. They will be a holding company who can reorganize, organize their own structures as per their choice. They don't have to go to the government for taking any call or a decision, because they'll have their own board of directors. A consulting firm known as the KPMG. You would have actually heard about this firm. This firm has been co-opted for examining the restructuring and the building of the internal structures of all these seven companies. The ownership of the land, the buildings will be owned by this corporation. Seven corporations will hold their own land or the assets which have been taken over. And the government has given them a concession as of now that in the make and the buy and make category, they will have a special preference of 15% over the L1. So this is a major concession which has been given by the government to ensure that they slowly settle down into a competitive market. The working capital for the next 5 years will be provided by the government, and they will be free to make their own procedures, their own manuals, their own SOPs, and all the existing employees and the officers will be on a deputation for a period of 5 years. After 5 years, they will be given an option of VRS, and then a decision will be taken that how many of them the corporation is wanting to continue with. A government will take care of any shortfall or losses to the tune of 30%. So this hand holding also the government is actually giving to the companies. They will have all the benefits which the MSME are enjoying today. As per the rules and regulations, they will be coming under the category of the MSME, that is the medium and small scale industries, and they have a absolutely free hand, a corporate culture. They have to maintain their own identity, and they will have to develop a separate organization culture. How they have to actually function in a competitive way. So each one of them, remember now, there are 7 entities, they are not one OFB as such. So they are going to function independently like the corporate. Okay, thank you.
That was really clear. I'm pretty sure that's going to have a lot of benefits. Sir, how will this result in a better state of indigenization, and will this actually reduce India's dependence on imports?
A very important and a very pertinent question has been is put on this. What is the definition of indigenization today? We must understand that uh, anything which meets a requirement of at least 50%. That is as per the DAP 2020. Supposing if I am able to manufacture an item with 50% or more than 50% of the indigenous content, we will call it indigenization. Because it's not possible, you see, at this stage where we are to go in for 100%. So DAP has been framed accordingly that we have to aim for that 50% of indigenous content. Secondly, there is a negative list of imports. What does that imply? That implies that the government has decided 209 items will be manufactured in this country. This equipment will not be imported. So that list is with us, and I will be discussing that list with you and what impact this list is going to make on the process of indigenization. Second, you have to understand that almost we as a nation are the second largest importer of defense hardware and equipment in the whole world. 9.5% of the world's market share is contributed by India. So this is an area where we are starting with a great deal of handicap. Golfers will know that there is a handicap which is given to a slightly weaker player in order to compete with the stronger player. So similarly, we are starting with a handicap, and it is important that this indigenization should not be seen in isolation with the defense industry. It should be seen with the entire manufacturing industry in the country today. You would be aware that semiconductor chips, I'm just giving you an example, most of the modern equipment today use semiconductor chips. We as a nation of almost 75 years of age, we have yet to manufacture these chips in our country. So I'm just giving you an example that what kind of a challenge is there for us now for this indigenization, and what I must appeal to the government is that once you go in for a process of indigenization, do not think about the current equipment, think about the future. What kind of technology you would want to acquire, what kind of equipment you would like to have. Let me tell you, in the times to come, these tanks and guns will have a limited role to play in warfare. You will have artificial intelligence, you will have other sort of robotics, blockchain, all these kind of technologies coming into fore, and the equipment will change. For example, I'll just give you an example. Did you hear about drones 5 years back? Especially drones and warfare. You look at the Azerbaijan and Armenian conflict, and you can see how a T-72 tank was a sitting duck for a drone. So this, warfare is going to change now, and whatever the process of indigenization. For example, I'll tell you what the government has decided to manufacture in the country. Dhanush gun, 155 medium gun of ours, tank guns, 120 oblique 125 The main battle tank Arjun is being manufactured here, but you will be surprised to know the indigenized content in that tank is not even 25%. So we have to increase it by at least 50%, as I said. So that is the biggest challenge. Then we have the multi-shell launchers. We have the mine protected vehicles. We have the ammunition and explosives and propellants. Around 150 types, which are going to be manufactured in our country or which are already being manufactured in our country. State of the art Pinaka systems. A lot of systems which are related to optical devices. Then we have the T-90 tank, because right now it's a Russian tank, but ultimately with the transfer of technology, it has to be manufactured in our country. Then we have the Vajra vehicle, which you have actually recently seen it be inducted into Ladakh. This Vajra is a high mobility combat vehicle, which can actually function like a light tank also. So we have these types of equipment which are in the negative list. This negative list primarily has been made by the DRDO based on what all DRDO has been manufacturing in India till date. So let us not get carried away by this negative list. The government needs to move a step ahead. They need to identify the equipments of the future which need to be manufactured in this country. For example, look at the aviation industry today. The Air Force officers will bear with me that this Tejas aircraft of ours, its indigenous content is very, very low, just about 20 to 25%. So in case we have to go in for the design, from the design stage onwards, to the materials, to the manufacture, and all these things, it's a very, very long path for us. But I am happy that a beginning has been made now, and I am sure with this process of indigenization coming about, let us give the government a period of 10 years. It's a safe period to assume, and I am sure that in this 10 years, you will find a lot of progress being made in our country towards Atmanirbharta. Thank you.
That was very nice, sir. So, what are the revised targets on exports, and what are their prospects given the current state?
It's a very it's a question which I think recently the Prime Minister also made an announcement on this. The targets are of 5 billion US dollars. And in terms of crores, if we translate it, by 2025, we have set ourselves a target of 35,000 crores. Right now, we are at 9,611 crores. So it is 2021. So in 2014, it was 1941 crores. So this journey of say 6 years or so, from 1941, we have come to 9,611, which is almost 4 times, you can say. But to achieve 35,000 crores is a big task. So, you know, how does the government plan to go about it? Government has cleared 156 defense equipment for exports as of now. This list was cleared in the second half of 2020. So, what does it include? It includes the light combat aircraft Tejas, the artillery guns, the battle tanks, the missiles, the anti-tank mines, and the explosives. So, if you have a look at the list right now, where the government wants to reach 35,000 crores, it has got 19 aeronautical systems, 41 armament and combat systems, 4 missile systems, 27 electronic and communication systems, 10 life protection systems, and 28 naval systems. So like that, and there is a NBC equipment also there. So you can see that the Astra missile, the Nag missile, the Akash missile, the Brahmo missile. These 4 missile systems are going to be exported now. Then we have the battle tank Arjun, which is going to be exported. Then we have the Pinaka weapon system. We have the RT guns now, is Dhanush. You see, unfortunately, Indian Army placed an order for 114 Dhanush guns in 2017. And so far only 12 guns have been supplied. They were supposed to manufacture 48 guns every year and give it to the army. So you see the challenge. We are talking of exports, but we are forgetting one thing. You know, what about our own deficiencies as of now? The government may very well decide to export and have a target of 35,000 crores, but at the same time, we have to overcome our own deficiencies. So a detailed study will have to be done on the list of exports and to remove those items where our own forge is lacking. We must first look at equipping our own army and making up their deficiencies before we concentrate on exports. So this is my take on this.
Yes, sir. So, my next question to you is, what are your thoughts on privatization and apprehensions of the industry, sir?
You see, privatization is a good thing. A lot of companies are already into the manufacture of defense items, like L&T, Bharat Forge, and Tatas are there, and a number of other companies are there. But the biggest question now is, who will join hands with the ordnance factories. So, and how do we go about having a partnership with the private sector? Two ways are there. One, you go in for a joint venture, and the government has laid down that the government of India will have a 51% stake, and you can go up to 49% as far as the joint venture is concerned. But unfortunately, none of the private industry has so far come forward for a JV venture, because they are skeptical of joining hands with the ordnance factory, because they are not sure to what extent the orders will come. See, you have to understand today the total capacity of all the 7 entities which I have talked about is 17,000 crores worth of orders every year. But unfortunately, if you see what has been happening the last 5 years, these factories are only getting orders worth 12,000 crores. So their capacities are underutilized. Now, once you join hands with the private sector on a JV model, they would want a dedicated order support for at least 5 years period. See, nobody will want to get into a loss-making business. He would always want to look at profit making. And for the private industry to be a profit making concern, he must have a dedicated pipeline, because he will have to create an assembly line for an item which has no civil end use. It cannot be used in the civil industry. It is a defense item. So you will have to actually give him the hand holding for at least 5 years. So what the private industry is, for them, what is acceptable is, because I have had a number of discussions with the private sector, they are open to a PPP model, a public private partnership model, and they want to be product specific. They don't want to do it in a holistic manner. They say, okay, you identify a project, give it to us, discuss it with us. We are willing to get into a PPP model with you. So a strategic partnership model, as you may call it. So the companies now, these PSUs, will have to consider this model and you get into with the private sector. So these are the apprehensions, as you asked me that what are the apprehensions. So these are the apprehensions these private players have. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes. So my last question to you is, are there any other important areas for focus for Atmanirbhar Bharat to be a success in the long run?
It's a very good question. You see, what is Atmanirbhar? Atmanirbhar does not mean that you manufacture an item in India, but you get the technology from abroad. So the starting point for any definition of Atmanirbharta is transfer of technology. We must have the technology within the country. See what will happen. For example, T-90 tank. I'll give you example. I have you personally handled this issue in Army headquarters. T-90 tank we got from Russia, but they never gave us the technology. A tank is with the Indian Army for the last about 15 to 20 years. The spare support of the tank, the spares are also not manufactured in India, especially the Class A items like the gearbox, auxiliary gearbox, the crankshafts, the levers. So we have to get these items from Russia. Now, what has happened in Russia is that they have discarded the model of the T-90 tank, what they gave to India, and they have migrated to a newer model with a different kind of a spare design. So for them to give the spares to us, they are charging at 10 times the original cost. And we have absolutely no option but to buy from Russia. Today, if the Russia stops the spare support of the T-90 tank of the Indian Army, the entire 10 to 12 regiments of the Indian Army will go for a 6. So, this is the starting point for Atmanirbharta. Transfer of technology is the most important aspect. We have to get into it. Second aspect is research and development. If you have a look at the budget of the ordnance factory, they have been spending only 0.5% of the budget on R&D. How can you survive with this kind of a pittance? So, a dedicated technology fund, the government has now promised. The government has a technology fund which they have recently created. This technology fund is going to be made available now to the 7 entities from the government. So it is going to help a lot. It will be a force multiplier for these 7 entities now to take the money from the technology fund, do the research and development, get the technology within the country, and start their manufacture. And the last 2 other important aspects are quality and pricing. It's a competitive world. You will have to match the pricing of the other competitors as well as the quality. And this Baimani Raj, as actually going along, why these ammunition accidents are taking place? Because use of substandard raw materials have been used in the manufacture of ammunition. There is no fault of technology. Technology to manufacture a bomb or to manufacture a mortar or to manufacture an ordnance or to manufacture barrel is very much available in our country. The problem is in the use of the material. And therefore, these are the challenges I foresee as far as the Atmanirbhar process is concerned.
Oh, that was very well put. Talking about Russia and research, we have a question from Ms. Lakshmi Panikar here. How will the move to corporatization of OFB for greater indigenous design capacity and higher localization also help evolve India's defense ties with nations from buyer-seller to close joint military production and research? You've answered that. The further question is that how will the restructuring affect the ongoing joint venture between India, Russia for production of AK-203?
You see, all the contracts which have been concluded, they have to be honored. And it is between the government to a government contract. It's a government to government contract, so it is going to be honored. So there's no problem as far as that is concerned. This weapon is being manufactured in Korwa. In UP, there is this ordnance factory, Korwa, where the AK-203 rifle is being manufactured. The Russians are already here. They are a part of the process. The only problem I am actually visualizing is the transfer of technology again. The Russians so far are reluctant to give this technology to us. So let us see. It is still early days, and I'm sure the government will prevail upon them, because once we actually get this technology to manufacture, and what is there to manufacture assault rifle? It is the simplest of things to manufacture. You don't require any rocket formula or rocket science to manufacture assault rifle. Today, if you look at the alternative weapon industry in Bihar and UP, so many kattas are there, and so much of hathiyar is being manufactured in the local areas. So we have no jugaad is there with us. We have absolutely no problem. We must acquire this technology. We must make this assault rifle in our country. We must equip the entire armed forces and the paramilitary forces with this rifle, and then we must start exporting it. Because see, we must take things in a stepwise manner, and whatever we will manufacture in the country, the end state has to be export. Always we, have that mindset that once we start a manufacture, we must cater for our own needs and thereafter go for exports. Yes.
The next question is from Sneha Kathy Sebastian. So, in the recent years, there has been a lot of privatization in India. Even though privatization increases efficiency, it can have a major drawback of increased taxes for common people because the government isn't getting enough revenue. What is your comment on this?
So I think this question is best can be answered by Nirmala Sitharaman. She is the finance minister. But I can tell you this for certain, that there is no problem as far as revenue is concerned. Our country is on the right path. The IMF has already declared a growth rate for our country as 9.5% and going to 11.5%. The same IMF has declared the growth rate of China as only 4.5%. So you see that we are on a progressive path, and we have to prioritize. See, we cannot ask for each and everything which the armed forces want. It's not possible, because the government has to look at the health sector also. It has to look at infrastructure also. It has to look at the education, the sports development in the country, everything. You see, every department is important for the government, especially the health part, because you see, after the COVID, what we have experienced is paucity of our health infrastructure. So focus has to be there also. So I'm sure the government is going to prioritize things, and the way the geopolitics of this region is actually developing, I have no doubt in my mind that defense will occupy a very major share of the government budget.
Thank you, sir. That was a very well put answer. Our next question here is by Mr. Joseph Punnam. Before it was dissolved, there was a pending order worth rupees 65,000 crores. What will happen to such orders given the fact that the OFB is now dissolved?
I did not get it. What are these pending orders about? Okay, on our armed forces. Okay. Those orders will not be cancelled. That is the understanding which the government has actually given. Because if you cancel those orders, those industries will have nothing to manufacture. So we, as a matter of fact, the orders have to increase. This 17,000 crores is the capacity of all the seven entities, and we are only giving them orders worth only 12,000 crores every year. So these capacities, it is not that we because the capacity is there only you to make up that capacity we must give the order. It's not that, but we must uh, rationalize also, and actually ensure that whatever the Indian Army wants, whatever the needs of the armed forces, they will now be going globally. So you have to understand these factories have to compete with the global market today. It is not going to be on the table, because no longer the indents are going to be placed by the armed forces on them. It will be a global tender, and thereafter a supply order. And a supply order is a contract. It has to be honored in that time frame and the quality. So all these aspects, it is going to be very, very challenging.
Thank you, sir. Our next question here is by Mr. Geraldius Vyatham. Sir, will the structure of weapons making in India help India to be a superpower or independent from other for defense mechanisms?
You see, you will be happy to know that India is now exporting defense equipment to 84 countries. So that is a major step by itself, and especially countries like Vietnam, Philippines, which are there in the South China Sea. So these countries are threatened by China now, and especially Vietnam is now being given the BrahMos missile, so that it can take out the Chinese Navy at a standoff distance. So this kind of initiatives actually progress ourselves towards being a superpower. Becoming a superpower is not going to happen overnight. It is going to take a number of years. As I said that at least 10 years you must give to this industry, defense industry, and after 10 years, let us review the entire thing in a cycle of every 2 years. There should be a 2 yearly review on our defense manufacturing capability, and up to a period of 10 years. And once we review every 2 years, whatever are the shortcomings, we must have a look at that and try to improve upon that. And I'm sure that your generation we will see a more powerful India, a more better India, and a more vibrant India.
Those really strong answers, sir. Our next question is from Yash Hazarea, Mr. Yash Hazarea. Sir, as you mentioned that future of warfare would be non-kinetic in nature and focus more on artificial intelligence, China has already spent nearly $20 billion on artificial intelligence for its defense. Don't you think that our previous governments failed to have a long-term approach and have pushed India way behind China and USA in this race for technology dominance? How can we bridge this gap to counter this threat?
See, whatever has happened. I would like to comment on it, because these are political issues which we are not competent to speak upon. Let the politicians speak on this. But as far as we are concerned, is important. Yes, the defense has been neglected. There's absolutely no doubt about it. George Fernandez, a number of years back, he made a statement in the parliament that our biggest threat is from China. And what we did about it, we decided to raise a core, but we never gave that kind of weaponry to that core to equip itself against China. As a result of which, China is flexing his muscles every now and then. So now we have realized the importance to equip ourselves. So whatever has happened. We have to look ahead now. There is no point looking backwards. We have to look forwards. And we have taken the right step in the corporatization. We have taken the right step in FDIs. We have taken the right step in theaterization of commands. We have taken the right step in having a cyber defense agency. As you spoke about artificial intelligence, cyber warfare is going to play an extremely important role in the future. So we have already taken a step on that direction. So all these steps which we have taken, we have to give the government some time to start the process and start actually getting that kind of technology within the country. So that is going to be the challenge, as I said.
I guess that's like the end of questions we have for today. So thank you so much, sir, for your patience and time.
Thank you. It
On
was a
behalf
wonderful, it was, I think your questions were more researched even than the topic itself. And I am extremely happy that all your interns who are research associates of this wonderful forum are already thinking ahead, and it speaks for a very bright future for our own nation that we have such young minds who are already so much concerned about the growth of the country, the status of the country, and the security of the country. My hats off to all of you, and you deserve the best.
thank you so much, sir. On behalf of Indic Researchers Forum, we extend our warm regards and are immensely grateful for your time and insights. It was indeed a great pleasure to have had you today, sir. On this note, let's end today's session and thank everyone for joining us.
And before I actually end, I want to thank Madhusudan sir. He has been a part of this discussion, and I'm really honored by his presence here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So for regular updates, please follow us on our various social media platforms. We look forward to hosting many such informative sessions. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Thank you, General. That